I want to be the Brady of, bring multiple if I could.
Oh, you can be me. I brought multiple too.
You too.
That right there is exactly the kind of statement that rubs people the wrong way. The confidence, borderline cocky. And for some NFL vets, especially legends like Ray Lewis, it's a problem. Because after that conversation, Ray Lewis didn't just speak for himself, he exposed how other players really feel about Lamar Jackson. Is it jealousy? Or is there something way more personal going on behind the scenes? In this video, we're breaking down exactly why some NFL players seem to have a problem with Lamar and what's truly fueling all the tension in the locker room and beyond. Let's get into it. Lamar Jackson, the revolutionary quarterback under fire. Lamar Jackson burst onto the NFL scene as a first-round draft pick in 2018, quickly establishing himself as one of the league's most dynamic players. His college career at Louisville, where he won the Heisman Trophy in 2016, already showcased his unique dual-threat abilities that would later transform how football is played at the professional level.
Lamar showed, as you know, a ton of promise his rookie season as he guided the Ravens to an AFC North championship. But he has bigger goals in mind, like that clip that we just showed. He wants to build a dynasty here in Baltimore and be part of that.
Jackson's 2019 season was nothing short of historic. He became the unanimous MVP, leading the league in touchdown passes, while setting a single-season rushing record for quarterbacks with 1,206 yards. He became only the fourth black quarterback to win the MVP award, joining an exclusive club that includes Cam Newton, Michael Vick, and Steve McNair. As of recent records, Jackson holds the all-time record for quarterback rushing yards with 5,258 yards and has secured 2 MVP awards, 2019 and 2023. His playing style, characterized by exceptional speed and agility, has literally redefined the quarterback position.
Well, during an interview with former Ravens great Ray Lewis that took place before the postseason, Lamar talked about how he wants to be the Tom Brady, that's right, of the Ravens. Hey, look, I love the confidence and the vision from Lamar.
But here's where the story takes a dark turn. Despite these incredible achievements, Jackson faces a level of criticism and outright hatred that seems disproportionate to any legitimate football concerns. Research into public opinion reveals that Jackson faces significant criticism that goes far beyond normal sports debate. The reasons for this hate are complex and troubling, revealing deep-seated biases in how we evaluate black quarterbacks in the NFL. One of the primary criticisms leveled against Jackson is his reliance on running, which some view as untraditional for a quarterback. Critics argue that quarterbacks should primarily be pocket passers, and Jackson's style is seen as a gimmick that won't lead to sustained success. An anonymous NFL defensive coordinator's comment exemplifies this bias. If he has to pass to win the game, they ain't winning the game. This places Jackson in a lower tier among quarterbacks despite his MVP performances. Some Baltimore fans have even called him a running back, suggesting he should be replaced despite his MVP status at age 24. This criticism reveals a fundamental misunderstanding or unwillingness to accept that the quarterback position has evolved. Perhaps the most disturbing aspect of the criticism Jackson faces is its racial undertones. Research suggests a significant racial component to the criticism of Jackson, given his status as a black quarterback excelling in a style historically associated with black athletes. The Winston-Salem Chronicle notes that people love to lean on the fact that running quarterbacks, which are more often than not black, don't win Super Bowls, citing historical examples like Randall Cunningham and Cam Newton. This narrative ignores the success of mobile quarterbacks and creates an unfair standard applied primarily to black players. A Reddit discussion highlighted this bias perfectly. Lamar Jackson needs to work on his football IQ, but Joe Flacco made a few mistakes today. This comparison shows how different standards are applied to black and white quarterbacks making similar mistakes. Comparisons with other quarterbacks reveal this bias further. White quarterbacks like Sam Darnold retain support despite underperforming, while black quarterbacks like Jackson face more scrutiny. Even when compared to other black quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes, Jackson faces unique criticism for his running style. Critics often point to Jackson's perceived inability to perform in critical moments, particularly in the fourth quarter and playoffs. Reddit users have noted his limited fourth quarter comebacks, using this as evidence against his clutch performance. However, this criticism often ignores context. Jackson's down year last season was attributed to injuries and a lack of supporting cast, yet these factors are rarely considered when evaluating his performance. Nothing illustrates the unfair scrutiny Jackson faces, like the 2022 social media incident that went viral for all the wrong reasons. On November 27, 2022, following the Ravens' loss to the Jacksonville Jaguars, Jackson responded to a fan's criticism with a vulgar post on X, formerly Twitter. The fan had suggested the Ravens let Jackson walk rather than pay him over $250 million guaranteed, and Jackson responded with language that some interpreted as containing homophobic connotations. The post was deleted approximately 3.5 hours later, but the damage was done. Jackson Jackson apologized on December 2nd, 2022, stating, "I was mad, wasn't thinking about actions, and I apologize if I hurt feelings out there." However, the apology faced criticism for being too general and not specifically addressing the LGBTQ+ community. Jackson disputed claims that his language was intentionally homophobic, responding to ESPN reporter Jamison Hensley with, "This is defamation of my character, because not once have I ever mentioned or disrespect anyone's sexuality, sexual orientation, gender, religion, or race." While this incident was certainly problematic, the reaction revealed the different standards applied to Jackson compared to other players. The incident became a lightning rod for criticism that seemed disproportionate to similar controversies involving other NFL players. Jackson's contract negotiations became a focal point in 2023 when he sought a fully guaranteed deal similar to Deshaun Watson's contract with the Cleveland Browns. When the Ravens applied the non-exclusive franchise tag, allowing other teams to negotiate with him, no team showed interest. This lack of interest led to speculation about collusion among NFL owners, with some suggesting racial or strategic biases. The situation raised questions about the NFL's treatment of Jackson, with his negotiations being unprecedented for a quarterback in the 21st century. The media's role in amplifying criticism of Jackson cannot be understated. National media outlets use negative, controversial statements about Jackson for clickbait, generating traffic and engagement rather than providing balanced analysis. This sensationalism is evident in the use of anonymous quotes to generate controversy. The defensive coordinator's quote mentioned earlier is a perfect example, an anonymous source making inflammatory statements that dominate news cycles and shape public perception. Reddit users have expressed fatigue with this coverage, noting that any mention of Jackson's name generates clicks, views, and heated comment sections. This revenue-driven approach to coverage skews public perception toward negativity. What makes Jackson's situation particularly frustrating is the clear double standard applied to him compared to other quarterbacks. Despite being a two-time MVP, Jackson faces extremely high expectations where any perceived failure is magnified. One analyst noted, "No matter what Jackson achieves, short of winning a Super Bowl and being MVP of the game, the grading scale for him keeps getting pushed back. This moving goalpost reflects inherent biases in how we evaluate black quarterbacks versus their white counterparts." Fan rivalries, particularly in the AFC North, contribute significantly to Jackson's criticism. Steelers and Browns fans naturally criticize Jackson due to team rivalry, which is normal in sports but becomes amplified due to his success against them. However, this rivalry-based criticism often crosses the line from sports banter into personal attacks that reveal deeper prejudices about his playing style and capabilities. At its core, the hate Jackson faces stems from him being different. Patrick Queen, his teammate, noted, "When you're doing stuff that's different than what everybody else does and you're great at it, people don't like that." Jackson has transformed how the quarterback position is played, much like how the Golden State Warriors changed basketball. But change makes people uncomfortable, especially when it challenges long-held beliefs about what a quarterback should look like and how they should play. This is where Ray Lewis's perspective becomes particularly valuable. Lewis understands what it's like to be different, to face criticism that goes beyond performance, and to carry the weight of expectations while dealing with public hatred. His evolution in supporting Jackson represents not just the growth of a relationship between two Ravens legends, but a recognition of the unfair treatment Jackson faces. Ray Lewis, the legend with a shadowed past. To understand Ray Lewis's perspective on Lamar Jackson's situation, we first need to dive deep into Lewis's own complex legacy, a legacy that perfectly illustrates how the NFL and its fans can both worship and demonize the same person. Ray Lewis is, without question, one of the greatest NFL players of all time. His 17-year career with the Baltimore Ravens included 2 Super Bowl titles, numerous individual accolades, and a first-ballot Hall of Fame induction. But Lewis's career has been forever marked by controversies that continue to define public perception of him even today. The most significant controversy in Lewis's career stems from a double murder case in Atlanta on January 31st, 2000, following Super Bowl LXXXTR. The incident involved the stabbing deaths of 2 men, Jason Baker and Richard Lawler, outside a nightclub in Atlanta's Buckhead district. Lewis, along with 2 companions, Reginald Oakley and Joseph Sweeting, were initially charged with murder, felony murder, and aggravated assault. The prosecution's case included blood evidence found in Lewis's hotel room and limousine, a missing white suit he wore that night, and conflicting witness testimony. But here's where the story gets complex, and where we see the first glimpse of how public perception can be manipulated. Midway through the trial, on June 5, 2000, Lewis accepted a plea deal where murder charges were dropped in exchange for his guilty plea to a misdemeanor charge of obstruction of justice. He admitted to giving misleading statements to police and agreed to testify against his co-defendants. The twist? Oakley and Sweeting were ultimately acquitted on June 12, 2000, with the jury ruling the stabbings were acts of self-defense. defense. This outcome raised questions about the prosecution's initial aggressive stance and whether the charges against Lewis were pursued partly for publicity. Lewis later settled civil suits with the victims' families, paying over $1 million each, which he described in his memoir as an expression of love, not admission of guilt. In his 2015 memoir and interviews, Lewis maintained there was not 1 inch of evidence against him. As if the murder case wasn't enough, Lewis faced another major controversy near the end of his career. In 2012, allegations surfaced that Lewis used deer antler spray containing IGF-1, a banned substance, to recover from a torn triceps injury. The allegations came from a Sports Illustrated report that included a transcript of a phone conversation where Lewis allegedly requested supplements from a company called Swats. Lewis vehemently denied these allegations during Super Bowl XL7 Media Day, stating he had never violated his body or the game in such a way. Interestingly, the NFL did not conduct an official investigation, partly because they didn't test for IGF-1 at the time. This lack of investigation and Lewis's consistent denials, supported by his coach John Harbaugh, left the allegations unsubstantiated. Perhaps the most telling example of Lewis's complex relationship with public opinion came in 2017, during the height of NFL anthem protests. On September 24, 2017, Lewis joined several Ravens players in kneeling during the national anthem before a game in London. What made this particularly controversial was Lewis's prior criticism of Colin Kaepernick's protest methods. In August 2017, Lewis had advised Kaepernick to keep his activism private, suggesting the football field should be a sanctuary. Lewis later clarified on Showtime's Inside the NFL that his kneeling was not a protest but an act of prayer to honor God in the midst of chaos. He emphasized that he dropped to both knees to pray, distinguishing his action from Kaepernick's single-knee protest. The reaction was swift and brutal. Shannon Sharpe, Lewis's former teammate and FS1 host, publicly criticized Lewis, calling his actions hypocritical. Sharpe expressed disappointment, questioning why Lewis would kneel when he had previously said he could never do so because of military family members. A petition was started on change.org demanding the removal of Lewis's statue outside M&T Bank Stadium, garnering over 50,000 signatures. The Maryland Stadium Authority even increased security around the statue due to the petition. What these controversies reveal is a man who has experienced both the highest highs and lowest lows of public opinion. Lewis has been celebrated as one of the greatest defensive players ever, while simultaneously being vilified for his off-field controversies. He's been called a hero by some and a villain by others, often by the same people at different times. Lewis defended his actions by emphasizing his First Amendment rights and personal history, noting his work with military, police, and high-level officials to address community issues. He highlighted past actions, such as walking with Trayvon Martin's family and providing jobs in St. Louis after Mike Brown's killing, to underscore his commitment to social justice. This background is crucial to understanding Lewis's perspective on Lamar Jackson. Lewis knows what it's like to be judged not just on athletic ability, but on perception, narrative, and circumstances beyond one's control. He understands the weight of carrying a franchise, the burden of expectations, and the way the media and public can turn on you in an instant. When Lewis expressed that he didn't care about the petition to remove his statue, stating, "It only bothers me if I blatantly did something to gain awareness for myself. What I did is for our country." He revealed a man who has learned to live with controversy while staying true to his beliefs. This perspective of a legendary player who has faced both worship and condemnation gives Lewis unique insight into what Lamar Jackson is experiencing in today's NFL. And as we'll see in the next section, Jackson's journey has been filled with the same kinds of unfair scrutiny and double standards that Lewis faced throughout his career. Ray Lewis's evolution and defense of Lamar Jackson. The relationship between Ray Lewis and Lamar Jackson represents one of the most compelling mentorship stories in modern NFL history. But it's also much more than that. It's a story of recognition, understanding, and ultimately, a legendary player using his platform to expose the harsh realities facing the next generation of black quarterbacks in the NFL. From the moment Lamar Jackson entered the league, Ray Lewis saw something special. Not just the athletic ability that everyone could see, but the intangible qualities that separate good players from great ones and great players from legends.
Well, during an interview with former Ravens great Ray Lewis that took place before the postseason, Lamar talked about how he wants to be the Tom Brady, that's right, of the Ravens. Hey, look, I love the confidence and the vision from Lamar.
When Jackson told Lewis he wanted to be the Brady of Baltimore, Lewis didn't dismiss it as youthful arrogance. Instead, he recognized the ambition and vision necessary to achieve such lofty goals. This moment crystallized something for Lewis. Here was a young quarterback who wasn't wasn't just talented, but who possessed the mindset of a champion. By 2024 to 2025, Lewis's appreciation for Jackson had evolved into something deeper than mere admiration. He was witnessing the maturation of a generational talent in real time, and he wasn't shy about sharing his observations with the world.
And I'm telling you, I think the Ravens, with Derrick Henry coming there and what Lamar is doing now, I think Lamar is now, he's really starting to mature into what makes him really special. Athleticism, that's easy. He's the most athletic thing we've ever seen ever play this game. But when you talk about just maturity, I think he's starting to mature into it, which is, it's becoming poetic to watch. So I'm looking forward to it.
Lewis's words here are particularly significant because they address one of the most persistent criticisms of Jackson, that his game relies too heavily on athleticism and lacks the cerebral aspects necessary for long-term success. Lewis, having played the game at the highest level for 17 years, understands better than most that raw talent alone doesn't sustain greatness. He's the most athletic thing we've ever seen, ever played this game, Lewis stated emphatically. This isn't just praise, it's a definitive statement from a Hall of Famer who has played with and against some of the greatest athletes in NFL history. For Lewis to make such an unequivocal declaration carries enormous weight. But more importantly, Lewis recognized that Jackson was evolving beyond just his athletic gifts. The maturity Lewis spoke of wasn't just about football IQ or pocket presence. It was about Jackson's understanding of his role as a leader, his ability to handle adversity, and his growth in dealing with the immense pressure and criticism he faces daily. Having experienced his own share of controversy and public hatred, Lewis brings a unique perspective to understanding what Jackson endures. Lewis knows what it's like to be judged not just on athletic performance, but on perception, media narrative, and circumstances beyond one's control. Lewis has been both celebrated as one of the greatest defensive players ever and vilified for his off-field controversies. He understands the weight of carrying a franchise, the burden of expectations, and how quickly public opinion can turn. This perspective allows Lewis to see through the criticisms leveled at Jackson that others might accept at face value. When critics question Jackson's intelligence or leadership, Lewis sees a young man who has already accomplished more in 5 seasons than most quarterbacks do in entire careers. When they criticize his playing style, Lewis sees innovation and evolution. Jackson's statistical achievements are undeniable. 2 MVP awards, all-time leader in quarterback rushing yards with 5,258 yards, and a 2019 season that saw him lead the league in touchdown passes while setting a single-season rushing record for quarterbacks. Lewis understands that these aren't just impressive numbers. They represent a fundamental shift in how the quarterback position can be played. Just as Lewis revolutionized the linebacker position with his combination of size, speed, and intelligence, Jackson is revolutionizing quarterback play by merging elite passing ability with unprecedented rushing skills. While Lewis hasn't explicitly stated it in recent interviews, his support for Jackson serves as an implicit criticism of the double standards applied to black quarterbacks in the NFL. Lewis, having faced his own share of racially charged criticism throughout his career, recognizes the patterns in how Jackson is evaluated. The fact that Jackson faces more scrutiny than white quarterbacks with similar or inferior statistics isn't lost on someone with Lewis's experience. When anonymous defensive coordinators make inflammatory statements about Jackson's abilities, Lewis sees the same kind of unfair targeting he experienced throughout his career. Lewis's support becomes even more significant when considering his own controversial past with anthem protests. Having experienced public backlash for his actions, Lewis understands how quickly narratives can be twisted and how difficult it can be to control public perception once negative stories take hold. The relationship between Lewis and Jackson goes beyond simple mentorship. Lewis sees in Jackson not just a talented player, but a kindred spirit who understands what it means to carry the weight of expectations while facing unfair criticism.
I always say that, people say, they off to a slow start. Okay, maybe you lose 1 or 2 games, but you didn't come into the season to go undefeated. You come into the season to get to the end of the season, right? And I think the key is, like what we're building right now is, I love what we're doing regular season, but I need us healthy. Right?
Lewis's perspective on team success and individual performance provides valuable context for Jackson's career. Lewis understands that regular season success, while important, is ultimately just preparation for what really matters: postseason performance and championship pursuits. This long-term perspective helps counter the short-sighted criticism Jackson often faces. Through his support of Jackson and his observations about the criticism the young quarterback faces, Lewis is inadvertently exposing uncomfortable truths about NFL culture. The league that loves to promote its diversity diversity, and progressive values still harbors deep-seated biases that manifest in how black quarterbacks are evaluated and treated. When teammates like Patrick Queen note that when you're doing stuff that's different than what everybody else does and you're great at it, people don't like that, they're highlighting a fundamental resistance to change within NFL culture. Lewis's vocal support for Jackson represents a challenge to this resistance. Lewis's evolution in supporting Jackson also represents his own growth and understanding of the broader issues facing black athletes in professional sports. Having learned from his own experiences with controversy and public perception, Lewis is using his platform to protect and support the next generation. Lewis's statement that Jackson is starting to mature into it, which is, it's becoming poetic to watch, reveals not just admiration, but a deep understanding of the mental and emotional growth required to succeed at the highest levels while facing constant scrutiny. The elephant in the room for Jackson, and by extension for Lewis's defense of him, is the lack of a Super Bowl appearance. Critics often point to this as evidence that Jackson's style doesn't translate to championship success. However, Lewis's perspective on this criticism is informed by his own journey to championship glory. Lewis won Super Bowls in 2001 and 2013, but it took him 6 years to win his first championship and 13 years to win his second. He understands that championship success isn't just about individual brilliance. It requires the right team, the right moment, and often a bit of luck. When Lewis looks at Jackson, he doesn't see a player lacking championship credentials. He sees a player who is still building toward that ultimate goal. Lewis's own career trajectory provides a blueprint for Jackson: sustained excellence, continuous improvement, and persistence in the face of criticism. Perhaps the most powerful aspect of Lewis's support for Jackson is the implicit message it sends to the rest of the NFL and its fans. When one of the greatest players in league history, a first-ballot Hall of Famer who defined an era of Ravens football, speaks so passionately about Jackson's abilities and growth, it forces people to reconsider their preconceptions. Lewis's focus on accountability extends beyond just defensive schemes. His support for Jackson represents a form of accountability for the NFL community, holding fans, media, and fellow players accountable for fair and unbiased evaluation of talent, regardless of playing style or background. When Ravens teammates like Calais Campbell state that if you win 12 MVPs, you're the best quarterback of all time, they're reflecting the sentiment that Lewis has come to embody: unconditional support for exceptional talent in the face of unfair criticism. Lewis's defense of Jackson isn't just about supporting a teammate or protecting a fellow Raven. It's about defending the principle that excellence should be recognized and celebrated, not diminished by prejudice or bias. Lewis's description of Jackson's growth as poetic reveals the artistic appreciation he has for what Jackson brings to the game. Just as Lewis's own career was marked by a combination of technical excellence and emotional intensity that transcended traditional linebacker play, he sees in Jackson a quarterback who has elevated the position to an art form. This poetic quality isn't just about highlight reel plays or statistical achievements. It's about the way Jackson has forced the entire NFL to reconsider what's possible at the quarterback position. His success has opened doors for future dual-threat quarterbacks and changed how defenses must prepare and game plan. Looking forward, Lewis's support provides crucial context for Jackson's championship pursuit. Lewis knows that individual greatness doesn't automatically translate to team success. It requires the right supporting cast, coaching, and organizational commitment. Lewis's emphasis on health and team building reflects his understanding that Jackson's championship window is still wide open. Rather than focusing on past shortcomings, Lewis is looking forward to what Jackson can accomplish with the right pieces around him. Through his support of Jackson, Lewis is also cementing his own legacy as someone unafraid to speak truth to power. Despite his own controversial past, Lewis has positioned himself as a voice of reason and fairness in discussions about Jackson's abilities and treatment. This evolution reflects Lewis's growth as a person and public figure. The same passion and intensity that made him one of the greatest players ever is now channeled into protecting and supporting the next generation of Ravens greats. That brings us to the end of this story. For more videos like this, click on the cards on your screen.